He only wanted to serve tables, blending into the background like every other waiter that night. But the moment he opened his mouth and spoke in flawless German, the room shifted. Eyes narrowed, whispers spread, and curiosity turned into something far heavier. For a young black man working quietly in a busy restaurant, it should have been a simple interaction, but it became the spark for something unforgettable. A billionaire sitting nearby witnessed it all, and what he did next would leave everyone speechless. Was this just chance, or a moment that revealed something far deeper about race, privilege, and recognition? It was supposed to be just another shift. Michael Carter, a 27-year-old waiter, had grown used to the long nights and endless stream of faces in the upscale restaurant where he worked. He carried himself with quiet dignity, always polite, always professional, even when exhaustion tugged at his shoulders. For most customers, he was invisible, just another black man serving food in a world that rarely looked beyond the surface. But Michael was far more than what the eye could see. Born to immigrant parents who had worked tirelessly to build a life in America, Michael had inherited more than their resilience. He had a gift for languages, an ear that picked up sounds and rhythms with ease. By the time he was in his 20s, he spoke English, French, and German fluently, a skill most people never imagined he possessed. Yet inside the walls of the restaurant, this part of him remained hidden, tucked away like a secret treasure that no one cared enough to ask about. On that evening, the restaurant was alive with its usual symphony, the clinking of glasses, the soft hum of conversation, and the shuffle of waiters moving briskly between tables. Michael weaved through it all with the calm precision of someone who knew every corner, every shortcut. To most, he was just part of the background, a reliable figure who carried plates with care and smiled when required. But beneath his steady rhythm, there was always a subtle weight pressing against him, a lifetime of being underestimated, a lifetime of hearing the unspoken doubts in people's tones, seeing the raised eyebrows when he mentioned his education, feeling the assumptions that came with the color of his skin. That night, however, something was about to break through that invisible wall. A group of European customers had taken a table near the center, their words rolling in quick German that drifted through the room. Michael, balancing a tray in his hands, caught snippets of their conversation with ease. It was effortless, natural, yet powerful, because in a place where no one expected it, language was about to rewrite perception. He didn't know it yet, but the simple act of speaking, the one thing he had always carried quietly, was about to pull him into the spotlight. And among the faces in the room sat a billionaire whose reaction would change everything. The moment the German word slipped effortlessly from Michael's lips, the air in the restaurant seemed to pause. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. A few heads turned, brows furrowed, as though what they'd just heard couldn't possibly be correct. A black waiter speaking fluent German? It didn't fit the image people carried in their minds. The table of European guests leaned forward, visibly surprised, their smiles breaking into laughter. Not mocking, but startled, curious. They responded quickly in German, testing him, pushing the conversation deeper. And Michael, steady as ever, answered back with confidence, his tone polite yet fluent. To him, it was natural. To them, it was shocking. But while some were intrigued, others weren't so generous. At a nearby table, whispers started. One couple exchanged uneasy glances, their eyes darting toward Michael as though he committed an offense. "Did you hear that?" one muttered under their breath. "How does he even know that language?" Another guest shook his head, muttering words like showing off, as if Michael's ability was some kind of trick, a disruption to the order of things. Michael felt the shift immediately. He had lived long enough to sense when admiration turned to suspicion, when a room's gaze transformed from curiosity to quiet judgment. It wasn't the first time. Every step of his life had been laced with the same undertone, that his success, his knowledge, his very presence in certain spaces, somehow didn't belong. Still, he pressed on, finishing his service with composure. But the air was charged now. Each order he took weighed down with stares that followed him across the floor. Some smiled politely, masking their unease, while others didn't bother to hide it. And then the comment came. A man at another table, his voice just loud enough to carry, muttered, "Funny how these people always try to act smarter than they are." His companion chuckled, not even bothering to lower her tone. The words were like a knife, sharp, dismissive, designed to cut him down without ever addressing him directly. Michael's chest tightened, but he didn't break stride. He had been trained to keep his face neutral, his voice calm, no matter what was thrown at him. But inside, the weight of those words pressed heavily. He wasn't just serving food anymore. He was on display, judged for every syllable that left his mouth, every gesture he made. And yet, in the corner of the room, one man was watching closely, not with suspicion, not with disdain, but with piercing interest. The billionaire. His presence was quiet, almost unassuming yet powerful. He observed the entire scene unfold, the shock, the whispers, the cutting remarks, and he didn't look away. As the evening stretched on, the tension only grew. A woman at the German-speaking table complimented Michael loudly, praising his skill. "You speak better than many back home," she said with a laugh, her admiration genuine. But even her kindness seemed to fuel the resentment from others who couldn't reconcile what they were witnessing. A black waiter speaking perfect German, earning admiration, shattering stereotypes in front of their eyes. It was too much for some. By the time Michael retreated to the kitchen, his hands were trembling slightly. He leaned against the counter, taking a steadying breath. He told himself it didn't matter, that he had done nothing wrong. But the voices from the dining room echoed in his head, relentless. These people, acting smarter, doesn't belong here. He closed his eyes for a moment, willing himself back into calm. Little did he know, the night was far from over, because outside that kitchen door, conversations were shifting. A few patrons called for the manager, their complaints veiled in politeness but laced with prejudice. "Your staff should focus on service, not showing off," one said. Another added, it felt inappropriate, like he was trying to embarrass the guests. Each word was a distortion of reality, twisting Michael's harmless act into something offensive. The manager, caught between keeping wealthy patrons happy and supporting his employee, grew uneasy. He knew Michael's talent. He respected him. But he also knew how fragile reputation was in the world of fine dining. And in that moment, Michael's gift had been turned into a liability. Back in the dining room, the billionaire continued to watch silently, his expression unreadable. He saw the way prejudice lingered in the air like smoke, poisoning every glance, every whispered remark. He saw how Michael held himself together, refusing to crumble under the weight of judgment. And he waited. The climax of the night was approaching, though Michael had no idea. All he felt was a suffocating tension, the walls closing in tighter with every order he carried. Every time he stepped into the room, the whispers seemed louder, the stares sharper. He had revealed the truth about himself, and in doing so, had exposed the truth about others, their discomfort, their bias, their unwillingness to see beyond the color of his skin. And then, at the height of it all, the billionaire rose from his seat. Chairs shifted. Conversations quieted. His presence alone commanded attention. As he made his way toward the exit, he stopped briefly at Michael's station. The billionaire's hand moved quickly, something folded, something deliberate, before he walked out the door, leaving silence in his wake. Michael stood frozen, his heart pounding. The entire restaurant watched. On his tray sat a note, tucked neatly beside what looked like a ticket. His fingers hovered hesitant as questions swirled. What had just happened? Was this a gesture of kindness, or something far more complicated? The answer waited inside that folded paper, but Michael wasn't ready to look. Not yet. Michael's hands trembled as he picked up the folded paper, his pulse hammering in his ears. The restaurant had fallen eerily silent. Every eye locked on him. What could possibly be inside? A complaint? A cruel message disguised as generosity? He hesitated, his chest tight, the weight of the moment pressing harder with each second. Finally, he unfolded it. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate. The note was brief, just a few words, but they hit him with the force of a storm. They'll try to diminish you. Don't let them. Greatness has no color. Beside the note was a ticket. Not just any ticket. An all-expenses-paid invitation to an international leadership summit in Europe, a gathering of innovators, scholars, and change-makers. The billionaire had seen in Michael what the others refused to, brilliance, talent, and potential far beyond the walls of a restaurant. For a fleeting moment, hope flickered. His chest lifted, his heart raced. But almost instantly, the room erupted. Whispers grew into voices, sharp and cutting. Some scoffed aloud. Unbelievable. This is ridiculous. Favoritism at its finest. The resentment spilled like poison, tainting every corner of the dining hall. The manager appeared at his side, his face tense. Instead of celebration, there was fear. Fear of losing customers, fear of backlash. "Michael," he whispered urgently, "maybe step away for the night. This is getting out of hand." Step away? For what? For daring to show he was more than a stereotype? For proving that intelligence and refinement were not bound to skin color? Michael's throat tightened as humiliation burned inside him. The gift in his hand, the recognition of his worth, was being twisted before his very eyes into something shameful. The voices didn't stop. One man sneered loudly. "I come here to dine, not to watch some waiter audition for Spotlight." Laughter followed, cold and cruel. Another muttered. They always find a way to make everything about them. Each remark struck deeper, reminding Michael of every time he had been told, subtly or directly, that he was out of place. He wanted to disappear, to escape the suffocating scrutiny. But the note in his hand pulsed like fire, the billionaire's words searing into his mind. Greatness has no color. Was he going to let their prejudice define him again? His eyes scanned the room. He saw admiration on some faces, disgust on others, indifference on many. He realized this wasn't just about him. It was about every unrecognized voice, every talent dismissed because of the skin it came wrapped in. The climax of his struggle wasn't the billionaire's gesture. It was this choice. Shrink back into invisibility or stand tall in the fire of judgment. Michael inhaled deeply, his hands steadying. Slowly, deliberately, he placed the note and ticket on the tray in front of him. Then he lifted his gaze, meeting the room head-on. The silence stretched again, heavier than before. His voice, calm yet unshakable, broke it. "I've worked here for years. I've served with respect, with patience, with dignity. Tonight, I did nothing but speak a language I love. And somehow, that has turned me into a spectacle. I can't control what you think of me, but I will never apologize for what I know, for who I am, or for the color of my skin." The words hung in the air like thunder. Some turned away, uncomfortable. Others froze, struck by the raw truth in his tone. A few clapped softly, hesitant but genuine. Michael's chest heaved, not with fear, but with release. For the first time, he hadn't swallowed the injustice. He had faced it, spoken against it, and reclaimed his own dignity in front of those who had tried to strip it away. But as he looked down at the note once more, the question remained, what would he do next? Accept the opportunity and leave this chapter behind, or stay and continue fighting the silent battles that had always defined his life? The choice loomed like a cliff before him, and the world waited to see if he would leap. When the night finally ended, Michael walked out of the restaurant into the cool air, the note and ticket still clutched tightly in his hand. The streets were quiet, but inside his mind churned with noise. Every comment, every stare, every whispered dismissal replaying in sharp fragments. He had stood his ground, spoken his truth, but the weight of it lingered. Because in America, courage didn't erase prejudice. One defiant stand didn't dissolve centuries of injustice. Yet something had shifted. The billionaire's gesture wasn't just about a ticket or a note. It was a mirror held up to the room, exposing who was willing to recognize humanity beyond skin color, and who wasn't. For Michael, it became a turning point. A reminder that while ignorance could wound him, it could not define him. That his worth wasn't something others could grant or take away. In the weeks that followed, the story of that night spread. Some told it with admiration, how a young black waiter silenced a room with dignity and revealed his brilliance through a language few expected him to know. Others twisted it, making it about arrogance, about stepping out of line. But no matter the version, people were talking. And in that conversation, the deeper truth began to surface. How quickly society measures value through stereotypes, and how violently it reacts when those stereotypes are shattered. Michael eventually accepted the billionaire's invitation, not because he wanted validation, but because he refused to let fear cage him anymore. The summit opened doors he had never imagined. Mentors, opportunities, a platform to share his story. But no matter how far he went, he never forgot the sting of that night in the restaurant. The reminder that even in moments of triumph, racism could twist joy into shame, pride into discomfort. This is what racism does. It steals the ordinary. It takes what should be a simple moment, a waiter speaking another language, a worker showing his skill, a human being himself, and turns it into controversy. It plants doubt where there should be celebration, suspicion where there should be respect. Michael's story may feel extraordinary, but it is not unique. Millions face the same silent battles every day, at jobs, in classrooms, in neighborhoods. They are judged before they speak, measured before they act, dismissed before they even begin. Some never get the chance to prove themselves. Others fight endlessly just to be seen. And so the question is not whether Michael was talented enough to deserve recognition. The question is why recognition required the presence of a billionaire in the first place. Why his intelligence had to shock people to be believed. Why his dignity had to be defended at all. That night revealed a truth we cannot ignore. Racism is not always loud. It's not always a slur shouted in the street or a blatant act of hatred. Sometimes it's the subtle whispers, the dismissive glances, the disbelief that someone could possibly be more than the box they've been forced into. Those quiet forms of prejudice cut just as deep, sometimes deeper, because they're so easily denied, so easily brushed aside. Michael's story is a reminder, not just of the pain of racism, but of the resilience required to live through it. His courage was not in speaking German. It was in refusing to shrink when others tried to make him small. It was in standing tall when silence would have been easier. So, as you hear his story tonight, ask yourself, how many more Michaels are out there unseen, unheard, unrecognized, carrying brilliance that the world refuses to notice? And more importantly, what role will you play the next time prejudice tries to silence someone in front of you? Because change doesn't begin with billionaires leaving notes on trays. It begins with ordinary people choosing to see each other fully, choosing to listen, choosing to stand against injustice, even in the smallest of moments. Michael's story ends with possibility, but the story of racism, that's still being written. The question is, will we keep letting it repeat, or will we finally write a different ending?